They threw me out on Christmas Day, and the weirdest part is I didn't even slam the door. I just stepped off the front porch, listened to their laughter echo through the house I'd paid for, and checked the time on my watch. In exactly 1 hour, their celebration would end, because of a decision I'd already made weeks earlier, long before anyone told me I was ruining the vibe. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. My name is Daniel Hart. I'm 68 years old, retired electrician, widower, and at least on paper, the legal owner of the white two-story colonial on Willow Lane where my daughter and son-in-law were hosting their first real Christmas. I'd helped them move into that house 4 years ago. Watched movers carry in the couch, hauled boxes labeled kitchen and office up the stairs myself. I'd written the check that covered the down payment, then another that covered closing costs when the bank surprised them. I told myself I was giving my daughter a stable life, the kind of security my wife and I never had in our early years. What I didn't realize at the time was that I was also buying my way into a new role, the invisible foundation. Necessary but never admired, the invitations for that Christmas had gone out in early November. I know because my sister called to ask if I'd seen the fancy digital thing Megan had posted on Facebook. Snowflakes, gold, script, all that. Can't believe she's hosting already, my sister Laura said. Weren't they in that apartment over the pizza place like last week? That was 4 years ago, I reminded her. Time moves faster when you get old. My own invitation came via text a week later, no snowflakes, no script. Just, hey dad, Eric and I are doing Christmas this year at our place. His parents will be there, a few friends from work. You can come around too. Okay, we'll eat about 3, 2, not noon, not whenever you want. 2, I stared at the message for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Sounds good. What can I bring? I wrote. The dots appeared, went away, came back. Maybe just yourself. We've got the food covered. That was strange. Every Christmas my stuffing had been non-negotiable. Megan had once told me she'd only forgiven me for missing her high school dance recital because I'd brought stuffing to Christmas that year. Now they had the food covered. I showed up anyway, stuffing in hand at 1:30 instead of 2. Old habits die hard. Snow dust covered my car as I pulled into their crowded driveway. Eric's Tesla sat out front like a glossy black exclamation point next to Megan's Subaru and what I guessed was his parents' SUV. The house glowed warm behind the frosted windows. Lights twinkled on the eaves. It looked like a postcard. I rang the bell, balancing the glass dish under one arm. I heard footsteps, laughter, the muffled thump of music. The door opened halfway. Eric stood there in a crisp white shirt and dark green sweater, the kind of outfit you saw in clothing catalogs. He had that polished look he always cultivated now, hair perfectly styled, jaw shaved smooth, a faint scent of expensive cologne. Hey Daniel, he said, smile not quite reaching his eyes. You're early. Traffic was lighter than I thought, I replied, holding up the dish. Brought the stuffing, figured you'd have room. His eyes flicked to the dish, then over his shoulder into the house. I saw people milling around his parents near the kitchen, a couple I didn't recognize by the tree, Megan in a wine-red dress, her blonde hair pulled back in a way that made her look older than 32. She caught my eye and gave a small wave, but didn't come to the door. Yeah, about that, Eric said, lowering his voice. We really went in a different direction with the menu this year. Megan and I wanted to modernize things. Charcuterie, roasted Brussels with pancetta, I didn't know. Stuffing pretty classic, I said lightly. It can share a table with pancetta, I promise, he exhaled, impatient. It's not just the stuffing, Daniel. We've got a full house. Seating is tight. Tried to keep it small this year, more of a curated guest list. Curated, like a gallery. I thought I was part of that list, I said. You are, he responded quickly, too quickly. It's just, well, he glanced over his shoulder again. I caught a glimpse of his father straightening cutlery on the table, his mother adjusting a centerpiece and shaking her head at something Megan was saying. My parents are here, a couple of my partners from the firm. It's kind of a big deal for me. We're trying to make a good impression. Didn't realize I made a bad one, I replied. He winced. Come on, Daniel, don't make this weird. You know how you get telling stories about old jobs and wiring and how things used to be 10 times cheaper. It's not really the vibe we're going for. There it was, not a guest, a potential embarrassment. Eric let him in. Megan's voice floated over from farther inside, closer now. She peered behind him, eyes little too bright. Dad, I'm glad you came, she said, patting Eric's arm. I told you you'd bring the stuffing. Her attempt at cheer sounded rehearsed. She took the dish from my hands, her fingers brushing mine. For a moment, warmth, familiar. Then she glanced at Eric and the warmth cooled. Thanks, Dad. I'll see if we can make space for it on the sideboard. Translation, maybe in the kitchen, out of sight. Inside, the house was beautiful. I'll give them that. White walls, dark wood floors. Big tree in the corner covered in white and gold ornaments, not a child made one in sight. A long table set with matching plates and crystal glasses. It looked like the pages of a magazine if you didn't look too closely at the people. Eric's parents stood by the kitchen island, each holding glasses of white wine. His mother, Cynthia, wore a cream cashmere sweater and pearls, her gray hair in an immaculate bob. His father, Victor, had the permanent half-smirk of someone who had never in his life wondered if his card would decline. Daniel, Cynthia said when Megan pulled me into the kitchen to say hello. So nice you could join us. Eric said you might be stopping by like a parcel from UPS. I wouldn't miss Christmas with my family, I said, forcing a smile. Beautiful house you've got here. Yes, well, Eric and Megan have worked very hard, Victor replied. Takes a lot of discipline to afford something in this market. I opened my mouth, closed it. Megan looked at me almost pleading. Don't say it, her eyes begged. Don't embarrass us, so I didn't. I didn't remind them that 4 years ago Eric's income had been mostly potential and a website, that the bank had hesitated, looking at their combined salaries and student loans and whisper-thin savings, until I'd walked in and written a check that quieted their concerns. The deed had gone in my name to satisfy the lender. The plan had been to refinance in a year or two when Eric's business grew. That had never happened. Casual comments about rates not being favorable right now, and our accountant says to wait stacked up until they felt like truth. Dad, why don't you sit in the living room? Megan suggested. We'll call you when dinner's ready. The kids want to show you their presents. The kids, Ben 8 and Zoe 5. My reasons for biting my tongue more times than I could count. I went to the living room. They were on the floor near the tree, surrounded by wrapping paper and boxes. Ben brandished a new tablet. Zoe clutched a doll with hair better styled than any I'd seen in my childhood. Grandpa, Zoe squealed, launching herself at my legs. You're here, I scooped her up, the last of my resentment dissolving temporarily in the warmth of her hug. Wouldn't miss it, kiddo, I said. Ben looked up briefly from his game. Hey, Grandpa, he said, then returned to tapping the screen. I sat on the edge of the couch watching them. Navy blue throw pillows, fur blanket draped just so. No trace of the slightly stained recliner ID offered them when they moved in. Doesn't really fit our aesthetic, Dad, Megan had said kindly then. I'd kept it for myself. From the kitchen, clatter of dishes, muted laughter. Eric's voice rising above the others as he told some story about landing a client. I caught phrases like close the deal, 6 figures, and they trust me completely. I wondered if he'd ever talk about trust when it came to me. Ben, show Grandpa your game, Megan called from the hallway. Ben reluctantly turned the tablet. Pixelated figures leaped across the screen. It's a space game, he said. Mom said we might get a real telescope next year if Dad's bonus is big. That's exciting, I said. Your dad works hard, Ben shrugged. Mom says we have to be careful with money now. Cause of the mortgage and Dad's new car. Right, the Tesla. I'd seen the payments when Megan had accidentally left a statement on the counter last month, more than my rent. Okay, everyone, Eric clapped in the doorway. Find your seats, dinner is ready. The dining table looked like something out of a movie. White tablecloth, gold-rimmed plates, a roasted turkey surrounded by garnish, candles flickering. Name cards at each place setting in Megan's looping handwriting. Cynthia, Victor, Thomas and Elaine, apparently work friends. Megan, Eric, Ben and Zoe. My name was not there. I stood behind a chair awkwardly. Where should I sit? I asked. Megan's smile faltered. Oh, Dad, right. We had to add 2 people last minute. Remember, Eric's partners. The table's a little tight. So where do I go? I repeated. Eric gestured toward the kitchen. We set up a spot at the counter, he said. You'll be more comfortable there. The kids will be in the dining room with us. You know how crowded you feel when things are noisy. I never once complained about noise around my grandkids. Cynthia glanced between us, clearly aware of the tension but saying nothing. Victor took a sip of his wine, examining the turkey like a critic. I walked to the kitchen. On the far end of the island next to the fridge, there was a single plate, a single set of cutlery, and a folding chair. The stuffing I'd brought sat at the very end of the counter, far from the main dishes. Megan followed me in, eyes shiny. Dad, I'm sorry, she whispered. It's just there's not much room, and Eric wanted his parents near him and his boss, and we thought maybe this would be quieter for you. Like a kid's table, I said. But for one old man, it's not like that, she insisted quickly. You're still here, you'll still eat with us. You can hear everything, can I asked, from behind the fridge. Her lip trembled. Please don't make a scene, she said. Not today. That was the phrase right there that finally broke something in me. Not today, as if every other day had been open season for my feelings, but Christmas was reserved for image management. Eric appeared behind her, voice low but firm. Everything okay in here, Peachy, I said, moving to sit on the folding chair. The metal bit into the back of my legs. From the dining room, I heard chairs scraping, glasses clinking. Megan stepped closer. Dad, please just go along with it. For me, I looked at her. My little girl who used to make me sit in her blanket fort and drink imaginary tea, who'd cried when we couldn't afford the Barbie dream house and then later told me she'd never loved any gift as much as the cardboard castle we'd built together instead. Somewhere between then and now, she'd started being more afraid of displeasing other people than she was of losing herself, and I'd let it happen. Eric's voice hardened. Daniel, this is important to me, he said. My boss is here, my parents. I need tonight to look put together, not like some chaotic family circus where people argue about seating. God forbid someone think you care about your father-in-law, I replied, his jaw clenched. Don't start, he warned. Oh, I started this years ago, I said quietly, when I decided to play the generous father instead of the equal. When I wrote that check and told myself I didn't need my name remembered, only my act, that's on me, but being invisible hurts, Eric. Being treated like a prop in your show hurts. He rolled his eyes. There it is, the guilt trip. Megan flinched. Eric, do Eric me, he snapped. I'm running on 3 hours of sleep trying to make this perfect, and he strolls in early with his casserole and his attitude like everything revolves around him. Everything revolves around you, I said. That's been the problem for a while. His face reddened. He stepped closer, crowding the small space between the island and the wall. Megan grabbed his arm. Stop it, she whispered. The kids will hear. The kids would hear. They always heard one way or another. Even when no one said anything, they heard the silence. Eric pointed toward the front door. If you can't respect how we've set things up, he said, voice low and dangerous now, you can leave. No one's forcing you to be here, Megan gasped. Eric, no, he talked over her. You think you can show up late, early, whatever, ignore how we do things in our own house, I repeated. Interesting phrase, and expect us to rearrange everything because your feelings are hurt about a chair, he continued, ignoring me. Grow up, Daniel, this isn't about you, maybe it was, but it sure as hell was happening to me. I stood up slowly, my knee popped. Getting old was its own insult. I picked up my coat from the back of the kitchen chair. Megan reached out, grabbing my sleeve. Dad, don't go, she pleaded. It's Christmas. In this family, I said, shrugging into the coat, Christmas seems to be about pretending things are fine while hoping no one notices the cracks. I'm tired of playing that part, Eric snorted. Here we go, the martyr exit. I took a breath. In another life, I might have yelled, slammed a fist on the counter, let decades of swallowed anger pour out in one volcanic eruption. But anger like that tends to set the wrong things on fire. Instead, I pushed in the little folding chair neatly, adjusted my scarf, and looked Eric in the eye. You're right about one thing, I said. This is your house, at least that's the story you've been telling yourself. Enjoy your curated dinner, Eric, he smirked. Merry Christmas, Daniel. I looked at Megan, her eyes were swimming. I'll call you, she whispered. Take your time, I replied. I'm not going anywhere. I walked through the dining room. No one made room for me as I passed. Cynthia offered a tight smile. Victor didn't even look up. The two work friends glanced at me, then away, like they'd walked into the middle of a play they didn't understand. The air outside felt colder than before, or maybe that was just my blood. Snow had started falling, light, delicate flakes more beautiful from inside warm windows than on an old man's coat. I walked down the front path I'd watched being poured years ago and out to the street. It was 2:15. In my pocket, my phone buzzed, a calendar notification. Closing, Willow Lane, 3:15 p.m. Had set that reminder 2 weeks earlier. I hadn't decided to sell the house because of that one Christmas. The papers were already signed. The decision had come after years of being treated like the safety net no one acknowledged. After overhearing Eric tell someone at a barbecue that he'd finally achieved homeowner status, as if the house had sprung from his hustle alone. After hearing Megan tell a friend that her dad helped a little with the down payment, when that little had been everything I'd saved since I was 25, gone to my lawyer, a meticulous woman named Harper, and asked what my options were. Legally, she'd said, you have the right to sell, it's your name on the deed. Ethically, that's messier, but if you're asking me if you're trapped in this arrangement forever, the answer is no. We listed the house quietly, no sign on the lawn, no public advertisement. Harper knew a couple who were looking for something in that neighborhood close to their kids' school. They made a cash offer. Closing date, December 25th, 3:15 p.m. I hadn't told Megan or Eric yet. Part of me had been waiting to see if anything changed, if someone acknowledged the imbalance, if they said, hey Dad, we know we couldn't have done this without you. Instead, I'd gotten a folding chair in the kitchen. I got into my car, turned on the heat, and sat there for a few minutes looking at the house. Behind the front window, the Christmas tree glowed. I saw movement inside, shadows crossing, someone lifting a glass. They'd probably toast to new traditions. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Harper. Hey, Daniel, she said when I answered. I'm just pulling up to Willow Lane. You close in the car out front, I replied. You might want to brace yourself. Things are about to get dramatic. You sure about this? She asked. She'd asked the same question at least 5 times since I'd signed the sale documents. I was sure before, I said. Now I'm at peace. We talked about logistics. The buyers would arrive at 3:15 for a final walkthrough and to receive the keys. The money would clear into my account by the end of the day. All we had to do now was tell the people currently sipping wine and cutting turkey that the house around them no longer belonged to them. At 3:05, Harper's car pulled in behind mine. A silver sedan, professional but unassuming. She stepped out, smoothing her coat, folder tucked under her arm. Last chance to change your mind, she said softly, joining me on the sidewalk. I looked at the house one more time, at the wreath Megan had hung on the door. At the lights Eric had hired someone to put up because he was too busy. At the upstairs window that had once framed Megan's teenage face as she watched for me to come home from late shifts. Let's go, I said. We walked up the path together. I rang the bell inside. I heard chairs scraping, footsteps. The door opened a crack, then wider. Megan stood there, napkin still in her hand, confusion knitting her brow. Dad, you came back. May we come in? Harper asked politely. I'm Harper Collins, Mr. Hart's attorney. Attorneys have a way of making people nervous. Megan's shoulders tensed. Is everything okay? That depends on your definition of okay, I said. We need to talk, you, Eric, everyone, really. She glanced over her shoulder. The sounds from the dining room had quieted. Yeah, come in. The temperature inside felt different now, less warm, or maybe that was me. Eric was standing at the end of the table, carving knife still in his hand. His parents sat rigidly in their chairs. The work friends looked like they wished they'd chosen literally any other place to spend Christmas. The kids peered over the back of the couch from the living room, sensing the change. Eric's eyes narrowed when he saw Harper. What is this? This is my attorney, I said. And this is your last hour in this house as you know it. Megan laughed nervously. Dad, what are you talking about? Harper opened her folder, pulling out a document. Mr. and Mrs. Simmons, she said, using Megan's married name. I'm here to inform you that as of approximately 10 minutes ago, ownership of this property transferred from Mr. Hart to the Millers, who will be arriving shortly. The sale has closed. This house now belongs to them. Silence, the kind that makes your ears ring. Finally, Eric spoke. That's impossible, he scoffed. You can't sell our house without our consent, Harper repeated calmly. According to county records, this property has only ever had one owner of record, Daniel Hart. There was never a refinance, no transfer of title, no co-ownership agreement. Legally, this has been his house from day one. Megan's face drained of color. We were going to refinance, she whispered. We just hadn't gotten around to it. 4 years is a long time to not get around to something, Harper replied. In any case, the sale is complete. The buyers have paid in full. They'll be here in, she glanced at her watch, about 7 minutes for their walkthrough. Victor finally stood. Now wait a minute, he barked. You can't just waltz in here on Christmas and throw my family out onto the street. This is outrageous. Harper kept her tone professional. No one is being thrown onto the street, she said. The sale contract includes a 30-day occupancy agreement. The Millers have agreed to let the current residents remain here for a month as tenants at no cost to allow time to find alternative housing. After that, they expect to take full possession. Cynthia stood too, hand on her chest. You mean to tell me, she said slowly, that all this time my son and his wife have been tenants, living in your house? She looked at me like I'd committed a personal offense. Yes, I said. You could say that. Eric laughed, sharp and disbelieving. This is some kind of stunt, he said. You're mad about the seating, so you cooked up this whole dramatic performance. Very on brand for you, Daniel, always needing to be the center of attention. If I needed to be the center of attention, I replied, I wouldn't have waited 4 years to say something. Megan's eyes filled. Dad, why? She whispered. Why would you do this? I looked at her, and for a moment I saw not the 32-year-old with carefully applied makeup and a curated social media presence, but the 12-year-old who'd once asked, are we poor? When I told her we couldn't afford a school trip. I told her then that we weren't poor, we just had to make choices. This was another choice. A hard one because I made a mistake, I said quietly. I helped you into a house without setting any expectations. I let you believe I was a safety net that would always be there no matter how you treated me. You started seeing me as furniture, something in the background, the man you hid in the kitchen on Christmas so your boss wouldn't think you came from humble beginnings. Megan flinched. I heard you last year, I said gently, on the phone with your friend. You said Eric's parents really elevated our life. My dad helped a little, but they're the ones who showed us what's possible. Her mouth opened, closed, tears spilled over. I was stupid, she whispered. I was trying to impress her, I know, I said. But every time you did that, every time you let Eric talk about me like I was a burden, it chipped away at something. Respect, dignity, self-respect, too. I realized I could either spend the rest of my life being grateful to be allowed at your table, or I could remind you that the table is in my house. Eric threw his hands up. So this is revenge, he said. You're punishing us for not groveling enough, Harper cut in. Mr. Simmons, I'd advise you to be careful how you characterize this, she said. Your father-in-law made a legal decision about property he owns. He has offered you 30 days of free occupancy. From a court's perspective, that's generous. He glared at her. Who asked you? She's here because for years you were happy to benefit from his generosity without acknowledging its source, Harper said. Today is simply the day the imbalance ends. The doorbell rang, everyone jumped. That will be the Millers, Harper said softly. Megan's hand flew to her mouth. We can't let strangers in, she said. It's Christmas, so it is, I said. A day of reckoning, apparently. Eric moved toward the door, squaring his shoulders. He opened it before anyone could stop him. A couple stood on the porch, bundled in coats. Late 30s maybe. The woman held a folder. The man had that dazed, hopeful look people get when they're about to step into their first home. The woman said cautiously. We're the Millers. We were told we could do a final walkthrough. Eric just stared at them. Harper stepped in smoothly. Yes, of course, I'm Harper, the seller's attorney. Come in. This is Mr. Hart, the previous owner. And the Simmonses, the outgoing occupants. Going occupants. The phrase landed like a stone in the room. Ben tugged on Megan's dress. Mom, he whispered. What's happening? Megan dropped to her knees, pulling him and Zoe close. It's okay, she lied. Everything's okay, but everything was not okay, and children know when adults are lying. The Millers looked around awkwardly. We can come back later, the man offered. We don't want to intrude on your family time. This is as good a time as any, Harper said. Best to be clear about timelines. Eric finally found his voice. You can't just take our house, he said. It was never your house, I replied softly. You lived here, you made memories here, but you never took responsibility for it, not financially, not emotionally. You treated it as a stage for your performances. I'm sorry, Megan, I added, turning to her. Truly, I didn't want to do this today, but if not now, when? Another 4 years. Until I died and left you with a legal mess because I was too cowardly to insist on respect. She shook her head, tears falling freely now. We would have taken responsibility, she said. We just kept putting it off. I know, I said. That's the thing about putting things off. Eventually time runs out. Cynthia stepped forward, fury in her eyes. You are cruel, she hissed. This is cruel to your own daughter, to your grandchildren. I met her gaze steadily. Cruel would have been leaving them in a fantasy and letting reality hit after I'm gone, I said. At least now I'm here to help them navigate it, if they'll let me, but I will not help them maintain a lie. Victor opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time, he seemed to be doing math, not financial, but moral. How much had he assumed his son had done all this himself? How much had he quietly approved of erasing the old electrician in favor of the shiny narrative? The next half hour was chaotic. Harper walked the Millers through the house, documenting the condition of the rooms. Eric stalked from room to room, muttering under his breath about lawsuits. Megan cried quietly in the kitchen, shoulders shaking, while Cynthia alternated between comforting her daughter-in-law and glaring at me like I'd personally canceled Christmas. Through it all, I stayed mostly by the wall watching, not gloating. This didn't feel like victory. It felt like surgery, necessary, bloody. No one walked away smiling from something like this. When the Millers left, promising to coordinate the move-in date after the free occupancy period, the house felt smaller, or maybe it was just heavier. Eric rounded on me. You've destroyed us, he said flatly. We can't afford to buy this house. We can barely afford the car. Where are we supposed to go? To a smaller place, I said. When you can afford, when that fits the reality of your income instead of the story you've been selling everyone. And the kids, Megan asked hoarsely, how do I tell them we're moving, that we lost the house where Santa comes every year? You tell them the truth, I said gently, that you had help getting something you weren't ready for, that you forgot to be grateful, that you're learning now. Kids handle truth better than adults do. Eric shook his head in disbelief. You must be so proud, he sneered. Your little power move will never forgive you for this. I let that sit. Maybe not, I said. But ask yourself this, Eric, would you have changed if I hadn't done something drastic? Would you have ever looked at me and seen more than a nuisance at your curated table? He didn't answer. Megan wiped her face. Dad, she whispered. Are you cutting us off completely? I exhaled. My anger had burned off, leaving something else behind. Tiredness, sadness, and under that love I couldn't get rid of even if I wanted to. No, I said. I'm not cutting you off as my daughter. I'm cutting off the version of our relationship where I pay silently for your life and endure your husband's contempt. That part is over, the rest is up to you. She stepped forward, grabbing my hand. I'm so sorry, she said. I let him talk about you that way. I laughed along. I wanted his parents to think we'd done it all on our own. I was ashamed of growing up in a small apartment, of you coming home with grease on your hands, of not being polished. I squeezed her fingers. No, I said, the world tells people like you that you should be ashamed of people like me. It whispers that the only acceptable narrative is the self-made success, but there is no shame in being the daughter of a man who worked with his hands. There is shame in pretending you did it without him. Fresh tears spilled. Can you help us? She asked, voice small. Not with money, with figuring this out. Yes, I said. I will help you budget. I will look at rentals with you. I will move boxes. I will be there. But I will not buy you another house. That chapter is closed. She nodded slowly. Okay, she whispered. We don't deserve even that much. Maybe not, I said. But grace isn't about what you deserve. It's about what the giver can live with. I stayed for another hour. The Christmas dinner sat untouched on the table, candles burning low. No one had much appetite. The work friends made polite goodbyes and slipped out, clearly relieved. Cynthia and Victor retreated to the guest room to make calls. At one point, I found Ben and Zoe sitting on the stairs, their new toys forgotten. Ben looked up. Are we moving? He asked. Yes, I said. I sat down beside them, my old knees protesting. But moving doesn't mean losing everything. You'll still have your mom and dad. You'll still have me. Houses are walls and roofs. Families are the people inside. Will Santa find us? Zoe whispered. I smiled. Santa has a very good GPS, I said. He finds kids, not houses. That made her smile at least a little. When I finally left, it was dark outside. The Christmas lights on the house still twinkled, but the windows were dim. No laughter, no clinking glasses, just silence. In the days that followed, the story spread through the family grapevine as such stories do. Some people took my side. About time you stopped letting them walk all over you, my sister said. Others didn't. You humiliated them, my brother-in-law muttered. On Christmas, Dan, maybe I had. I didn't enjoy that part. I lost sleep replaying the looks on my grandkids' faces. But I'd also replayed for years the way Eric had spoken to me, the way Megan had let it pass, the way I'd swallowed it. Over the next month I helped them pack. Not every day, my pride still had limits, but often enough. I watched Eric wrap his fancy barware in newspaper, his hands quieter than I'd ever seen them. I watched Megan label boxes, kids, room, and kitchen with careful handwriting. I watched Ben put his favorite posters into a tube, explaining to Zoe that they'd make the new place ours. They found a smaller rental closer to Megan's work, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, no separate office for Eric, no yard big enough for a trampoline, but the rent matched their income. It was sustainable. Real. On the last day in Willow Lane, as the moving truck pulled away, Megan took one last look at the house. I hated you for a week, she said quietly. I thought you'd ruined our lives. Then I looked at our bank statements, our debt, our spending. I realized we'd been ruining our own lives for a while. You just turned on the light. I put an arm around her shoulders. Lights are what I know, I said. Spent my whole life wiring them. Figured I might as well wire one in my own family. She laughed softly. I don't know how long it'll take Eric to really get it, she admitted. He's still angry, embarrassed, but he's trying. He applied for a teaching job. Marketing at the community college, a steady paycheck, benefits. Sounds like a good start, I said. As for the money from the sale, I didn't buy a sports car or move to Florida, tempting as the sunshine sounded some days. I paid off my remaining debts, fixed the sagging porch on my own building, put the rest into a savings account and quietly into college funds for Ben and Zoe. They didn't know that yet. They will one day when tuition bills arrive and their useless grandpa's planning pays off again. On the next Christmas, things looked different. There was no grand tree in a 2-story foyer, no curated guest list. Just Megan's small rental living room, a slightly crooked artificial tree in the corner, homemade decorations. The kids in pajamas, hair messy, faces bright. Eric answered the door when I arrived, stuffing dish in my hands. He looked softer somehow, less polished, more real. Hey Daniel, he said, you're right on time. Traffic was light, I said. He glanced at the dish. You brought the stuffing, he said, and this time there was no annoyance in his tone. Good, we saved space on the table. Wouldn't be Christmas without it. Megan appeared behind him, smiling. Dad, I'm glad you're here, she said. We made a spot for you. At the table there were no name cards, no crystal glasses. Just mismatched plates, cheap wine in ordinary cups, and a chair between Ben and Zoe with a slightly worn cushion. My name wasn't written on a card. It didn't need to be. Halfway through dinner, Eric cleared his throat. I wanted to say something, he began, looking both at me and at his family. Last year I was an ass. Language, Megan murmured, glancing at the kids. Sorry, he said. I was a jerk. I treated you like you were in the way in your own life, in our lives. I pretended I'd built something I hadn't. You didn't destroy our celebration, Daniel. You ended the illusion. I did the destroying long before that. I felt something unclench in my chest. Thank you for saying that, I replied. Took guts, he shrugged, embarrassed. Working with college kids all day has given me a new appreciation for taking responsibility, he said. Hard to lecture them about owning their choices if I don't own mine. Ben raised his hand like he was in school. Does that mean Grandpa owns this house too? He asked earnestly. We all laughed. No, I said, this one's on your mom and dad. I'm just a guest now. Not just a guest, Megan corrected. Your family, and you're always welcome at the table, not the counter. I looked around at the slightly cramped room, at the peeling paint in the corner, at the secondhand chairs that didn't match. It was less impressive than Willow Lane. It was also more honest. They threw me out on Christmas Day once, and an hour later their celebration ended, not because I took something from them, but because truth finally entered the room. You can't keep having the same party once the lights are on and you see the mess. But sometimes, if you're willing to face it, you can build something better afterward. Smaller, simpler, real. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.